until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
Who you think you is? You can't cuss nobody. Look at you.
Do right
You're black,
by me.
you're poor, you're ugly, you're a woman, you're nothing at all.
Right by me.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to read and hear news just published through professional views. There to keep you in queue. We wanted for these days and time to unfreeze the voices and minds. So let the echo be heard to shine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Kaia Shivers with Ark Republic. Today, we are talking about something that we've been in conversation with. I've been in conversation with many people, but in particular, I want to bring the conversation with these two beloved folk that I have since the passing of actor and even activist and just a very kind of nuanced man, Chadwick Boseman. There's just been a lot of conversation, as well as people have been saying continuously, we are tired. So this conversation is dealing with multiple things. But before we get into it, I would like for the two panelists to introduce themselves. I think that they would do a much better job than I can. So thank you so much for this last minute conversation. Dr. Spencer, could you tell us more about yourself?
Hi, I'm Rolanda Spencer. I'm the managing editor of Ark Republic and the executive director of Alternative Education Research Institute. I'm joining the conversation today just to try to make some sense of everything that's going on in the world right now. Like Dr. Shivers said, we're tired. We're looking for answers. We're looking for peace. We're looking for something other than what we have going on right now. So, hopefully this conversation will spark some dialogue, will spark some understanding, will spark just a general sense of peace, at least, if not in the world, in your spirit. So, thank you.
All right, Baba Todd.
Good evening. Like I said, good evening, good morning, wherever this may find you. My name is Baba Todd Jackson. I am in Houston, Texas. I am ordained minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So my life consists of talking to people about where they find themselves, their mental condition. And what I found is our people are overwhelmed. 2020 has been a beast for our people. And like you say, we're exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't know Baba Todd actually led the 21 Days of Power with us last December 2019. And it was a very successful series that was about relinquishing or letting go of 2019 and coming into 2020. And in those conversations, we laugh about it now, but in those conversations, I kept saying 2020 is going to be very difficult and people are going to be looking for answers and to make sense of what's going on in 2020. And, Dr. Spencer always says, remember when you said that, you were saying that? I said, yeah, but damn, I didn't know it was going to be this bad. But Baba Todd has several workshops and series, and he does consultations, which he will talk about later on as we wrap up. But I am so happy for all of y'all to be here. Now, I want this to be a conversation. I know when we press record, we get all stiffy and stuffy, but let's relax. Let's get this in. This is a needed conversation. Thank you for those of you who are listening. So I first want to talk about Chadwick Boseman. A lot of the information about generally his acting credentials have been circulating, but there's some information that has popped up or generated about just how complex of a man he is. So what are some things or something that you learned about Chadwick Boseman that helped you reconstruct the narrative, maybe particularly about him, but even just how, Black actors navigate mainstream entertainment?
Go ahead, Sis Rolanda.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, what I was going to say is I thought what was really interesting is that the brother had cancer for 4 years, that he knew of. And if you look at the past 4 years, the body of work that he has comprised for himself during a time I would imagine of immense psychological and emotional turmoil, fear, anxiety. These are things I would just imagine anybody who would get a diagnosis like that, even hope,
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it in hindsight,
and even pain, and even in physical pain.
Definitely, like physical pain, yes. And so when you look at it in hindsight, it's like the brother was preparing his legacy. You know what I mean? And he did it without pandering. You know what I mean, to the world, like, oh, I'm sick, but I'm doing you know what I mean? He did it with dignity, he did it with honor, he did it with grace, and without a lot of Hollywood shit, excuse my language.
Right.
Without the machine driving that narrative. And I think that was very powerful. And I think that was why it was very hurtful to find out that this brother had transitioned so early in life.
Right. I think, just very quickly, by him standing in the face of the transition, I'm not going to call it a death,
right.
Standing in the face of transition and still carrying out his purpose, right? It's so, to me, comedic. So, there is, when I went to Florida A&M University, this is one of the very few times I'll mention FAMU because I'm still paying student loans. But when I went to FAMU, I was in an African-centered psych program. And we had to take one of the verses from the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Europeans call it the Book of the Dead. And the verse that I took, I can't remember it verbatim. It says that when I pass and I stand in front of my aunt and my heart is placed on the scale, I will not flinch, for I know that I have lived my life to the fullest. And I think he embodied that.
Yeah, to me, he did embody. He lived out his life to the fullest. A lot of times when we see 43, we say, that's a very short. He didn't get to live a long time, but and I really don't know a lot about the brother except for Black Panther. But I do remember somebody writing an article about him saying that he could take a part and take it inside out and act that part. You could just throw it on the table and he would take it, and so that showed to me somebody not only with a talent, but your talents are often your purpose. And he seemed like a well-grounded brother. I think I kind of really started admiring the brother from Black Panther, probably like a lot of people. But it was also, we have to look at the roles people are playing. And in that Black Panther role, he had a connection to his ancestors. He didn't forget them, and he recognized and honored them at all times. So I think which the whole movie did, but especially him and his part. And I think that's kind of probably more, we'll talk more about that a little bit later.
Yeah, we're definitely going to go into that was very interesting, that scene where he goes into the realm of the ancestors and he communes with the ancestors, because a lot of this is going to talk about ancestors. But I just wanted to mention a couple of things. I have a homegirl, shout out to Kaia Alexander, who used to have a wellness center off of Crenshaw and Leimert Park in Los Angeles called Lotus on the Nile. And she posted pictures today showing that he was taking comedic yoga classes. I have a former colleague, New York, Brooklyn, his name is Fahim. He said that Brother Chadwick was taking jujitsu from a grandmaster in Brooklyn that was very, African centered. And he worked at a Black bookstore. And all of these things that I always used to say, but it's so true. To me, actors are activists. Actors were activists or academics in their past lives, because there's so many intersections. And I think for him to prepare or take on these very, I think complex roles such as Thurgood Marshall, James Brown, Jackie Robinson, and then do the role of Black Panther requires a lot of studying. You just can't jump into that body, and be that. You've got to have been studying and doing some serious, to me, spiritual training for that.
Talking about all of those disciplines that he was practicing, that took a physical, mental, and spiritual discipline, type of consciousness ordinary person probably wouldn't have, I did remember him playing Jackie Robinson. And, we know what Jackie Robinson went through, and you have to step into the spirit of the energy of those people the parts that you're playing. And any good actor would. And I think he embodied that in Jackie Robinson and the Black Panther. It speaks to me that the brother was well grounded. And like you say, to go through colon cancer for 4 years, not to express it, not to show it. I mean, say, woe is me. I feel like that brother, whether it's 43 years, he lived his purpose. He lived what he was here. He came here to do what he was intended to do, and that's to live out and to be the best actor he could. And not only the acting, but the acting to me speaks to, it's almost like scripture in a sense. It's something he will leave for those that come after him. So, that's a little bit about, what I see in the brother.
So Dr. Spencer, let's get to the questions that we have laid out. I think the overarching question is an excellent question that you posed before we started. So I'm gonna let you lead that and then we follow.
Okay. So the question that I posed to the panel was, what does it mean to honor our ancestors as a spiritual path? I think that there is some demystification that needs to happen in terms of our understanding of communicating with those who have transitioned before us and who are now in the spiritual realm. So I just wanted to, put that out to the panel for Dr. Shivers and Baba Todd. So what does it mean to you? What does it mean to even hold them up and honor them?
I just want to,
Sister first.
Okay, thank you. Well, two things come to mind, right? I think for me, growing up and just coming from, a tradition of indigenous and African thought and practice, and then actually, getting more to it, studying when it was formally introduced, because in the United States, you don't get that type of education, right? As my understanding of ancestors is that I am an ancestor. I'm a continuum. I am like this whole conversation of, people reincarnating and coming back and old souls and things like that. This is just, meat, right? This is just flesh. The spirit and the soul, go on. So for me, my understanding is that I am an ancestor returned. When I go into the other realms, I will be an ancestor. So that's one thing. Second thing I want to say is in terms of demystifying ancestors, right? So there's a lot of folk, and this is conditioning, right? This is just part of our process of being here, right? I ain't gonna worship no ancestors. This devil worship and this witchcraft, right? All that stuff. You use money, right? Who's on the money? Dead presidents, right? You go to DC, who's on the mall? Dead presidents. You rolling down streets, dead people. You are nothing but in a culture of ancestor worship. The thing is, it ain't your ancestors.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. It's your oppressors' ancestors that you have continuously have been giving your energy to your whole life, and you don't even know.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what? You when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind are these Confederate statues.
Mm.
You know, they're everywhere in the South, and you energize that. You know, whether you want to believe it or not, you are participating in energizing the ancestors of those that oppress you. You talk about money. You know, the first thing that I come to mind is when Harriet Tubman they were proposing to put her on a $20 bill. And I was like, wow, I can't believe these folks gonna put on money, because that is the most venerating type of thing that you can do, is to put somebody on money, and because it's being constantly passed daily. And see, when you don't understand spiritual things, you suffer. We have been, you know, one of the things is I used to tell people, and you know, when they leave in church on Sunday, this is pre-COVID, and they go into the Chinese restaurant, or they, when you go into the Chinese restaurant, they don't, or any Asian restaurant, they don't have a problem with venerating their ancestors. You know, at the door, at the cash register, is some type of mini altar or something, which is in reference to the ancestors. And every time you pay, you venerate. We venerate everybody's ancestor. Sisters, when you go into the nail shop and you see that baby Buddha sitting below the cash register, and when you give money to her,
with the incense coming out and the oranges and all that, yes.
You are venerating somebody else's ancestors, which empowers them and connects them. And you know, every time the 4th of July comes, and see Memorial Day, we don't understand these holidays. We don't understand the significance of, you know, these statues and monuments. And I guarantee you, those statues and monuments are located on grids, and that's a whole nother conversation. But when you can reconnect,
we bringing it tonight. We need to talk about that. That is this conversation, because people don't even understand. I did this whole interview with this sister who is indigenous, right? The natives is the Black native, and she said, "Yo, all of these walkways and these highways we have were native paths that simply Europeans came, wiped out the populations, and poured concrete on it," right? So we need to talk about, brother, what you saying about these grids? They need to know.
These are energy points where you may have, if you go into certain cities, you got Thomas Jefferson, Robert E. Lee statue with him on horseback, and that's a grid. That's an altar. See, our people, they scared the hell out of our people. Because they made everything demonic that we did was natural to us. And one of those is your ancestors. You know, you can't be worshiping the dead people. I know it's stated in Old Testament about, you know, necromancy. But our people, if we understand, that wasn't a worship, that was an honoring.
Exactly.
And that was a recognizing where did you come from. I did a program when I was a youth pastor. I had a program where the first thing we did is I passed out a genealogy chart. And I told each child to take this back to your parents, and you all fill this out the best you can. Get them to tell you if grandma is not living or grandpa is not living, tell mom and daddy to tell you something about them. You know, and go as far as you can back. What that does, that begins to empower you. I like to always say, God has given you everything you need, but your ancestors have given you the blueprint for what you need to go further.
And you know what, Baba Todd, it's interesting that you say that, because in my social justice classes, when we talk about race, the first thing that I asked the class to do, and at my previous university, it was primarily a Latino serving institution, but you know, we had a lot of Middle Eastern, Asian, some Black, and some white. However, when I gave this this assignment every year where they had to go back as far as they could tell about their ancestry. Where did your people come from? You know, who were they? What do you know? And what I found is in almost every class, you had a white girl or a white boy in there who could trace their ancestors back to the Mayflower, or, you know, or something like that. Mm-hmm. But the Black kids barely knew who their grandparents were. And if you start talking about great grandparents, it's like, I have absolutely no idea. And what I've learned is that's what it is. We don't know. We don't know where we come from, and we don't have a point of reference. So, you know, when you, especially young people, they know what they are told in terms of their parentage. A lot of times maybe they don't even know both parents. You see what I'm saying? So the idea of lineage doesn't register the same as you would if you had a European person here saying, you know, my family was over here on the Mayflower. They landed on Plymouth Rock, or, you know, our family came here in, you know, 1782 from wherever. We can't say, we'll say our family comes from Africa, but we know Africa is a continent, right? If you said what country, they may not even know that there is another country that they can. You understand what I'm saying? It might sound strange, but the thought of a nationality doesn't compute with us as Black people for some reason in the United States. We can't call ourselves American like a Black Brazilian person would just say they're Brazilian, or you know, whatever it is. We're African Americans, but we have no memory of Africa in the tangible sense, but in our actions, we're very much African in the way that we do things. Sorry, go ahead.
I think part of us not knowing, like, our lineage is from several things. This is just part of the continuous disruption in America, right? So, I mean, first you had slavery. A lot of people don't know that after the emancipation, there were people who walked back and forth the United States looking for their siblings, their spouses, their family members, right? So and then this idea that we don't value, you know, family in the way in which we do, you know, is also part of this propaganda that has been repeated. And so I think at this point, a lot of us, and then also then you have to talk about, I know Dr. Spencer and myself can talk about this. A lot of our family who lived in the South were displaced or had to leave, you know, as a result of economic, you know, issues or social issues. And then that disruption, you know, some people left wherever they were in the South and knew they could never return, because if they did, they would get killed, right? So you know, those stories. I want to kind of go back to what Baba Todd was talking about in terms of money. And I think why money is so important is because this is a capitalistic society, which was built on slave labor. So money is currency, right? The 2 or the 3 currencies, right, before this paper bill is water, electricity, and sound, right? Which are, in the Kemetic principle, they're like these little, in the what do you call those things?
Hieroglyphics.
The hieroglyphics. I'm sorry. Yes. And that is because that is the current, or the things that carries your spirit, right? Your spirit that goes from one to the next. So it is no, what do you call it? Coincidence that in a capitalistic society, currency And the currency of money, right, is this dollar bill is centered in how this society is built. And I also want to say this. You talked about altars. There's the biggest altar in the United States is Washington, D.C. How it is like this square, right? And at specific locations, you have very specific things. Another thing about Washington, D.C., and there is a scholar, I think by the name of Tony Broder, who points this out, and he does this whole tour of Washington, D.C. At specific sites, there is actually Egyptian or a white version of Egyptian monuments or deities or whatever you want to call them in Washington, D.C. So the capital of the United States is an altar. The next biggest altar, in my opinion, is Mount Rushmore, where you have those 4 white men on the side of that mountain. So it's like, let's be clear about us being in a society where ancestors are very, very prevalent.
Now the conversation is I mean, this conversation go many places. Now you're dealing with imagery and the impression upon the mind, because the altar symbolizes the sacred place, which is your mind, and that is where visualization, that is where the prayers, that is where your words, your thoughts, on your emotion are channeled through, is an altar. Everywhere is an altar. Every religion has an altar. Every church has an altar. I don't care what it is. That is that sacred place where those things are channeled. It is the vehicle to which things take place. This conversation, man, I tell you, when I think about ancestral energy, and people understand this, I tell people all the time, that in the church, they say, well, we don't talk about ancestors. No, yes, you do. Because at the beginning of Matthew, we do the genealogy of Jesus. In Numbers, they do another genealogy. So if it wasn't important there, you can't say it's not important today. And so with that bridge being detached, and then another thing, I like to just say, give our people, we have been traumatized a long time. We have been under siege since we've been over here. I went to Egypt in 2016, stayed there 2 weeks, went up and down the Nile River. And the 2 brothers that I went with, we kind of did a deed, whatever you call it, at the end of the trip. And we just came to the conclusion, man, our people been trying to run from this man for a long time. And especially here in America, it's about trying to hold on to your sanity here in America. When our people were left out of slavery, a lot of them was left and just left there with no reparations like the slave owners were given. After Reconstruction, when they did do something to build themselves up, it was torn away again with no reparations. When our men could do the skilled crafts, this country brought in people from Ireland and other places, Scotland, to do the trade, and documentation was written that no one could hire us. So without a way to be able to take care of yourself, our people have been through hell, and for us to still be here, for some of us to still be walking around with any amount of good sense, it's because of our ancestors. It's because of those that are before us, who protected us, who guided us, who strengthened us, because anybody else wouldn't be here. Look what happened to the so-called Native American Indians. Almost wiped them out. So any other people that has encountered him have been wiped out. So we have to, where does it come from? God and our ancestors have kept us and sustained us, because otherwise, excuse the French, we'd be batshit crazy, which some of us are.
Well, let me pose this to both of you. When we're talking about the ancestors, we see a lot of younger people nowadays, and well, let me get your thoughts on it. Where they have the shirts that say, "I am not my ancestors," like I'll lay hands and things like that. I thought that was a very kind of peculiar message, and is steeped in so much misunderstanding about who our ancestors were, and what it is to be strong, and what it is to persevere, and to kind of bring it down to this, well, I'll kick your ass type of mentality, where they wouldn't. It's just sort of like a slap in the face to me, as someone who looks to my ancestors, for guidance and things like that. But others say, it's not meant in that way. So I would really just like to get some perspective from the both of you. How do you feel about that type of message to our younger people? What does that say?
Kaia, I didn't want to jump from, but well,
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead. To me, it is a lack of information, a lack of knowing. In a way, it was an insult. I am not my ancestors, in which the shirt to me gave the impression that our ancestors were pushed over and they didn't do anything. Yeah. No, they did a hell of a lot. Right. Because if we were doing a third of what they did, we'd be in better shape. Huh. They left us financial institutions. They left us universities. In some cases, they had established towns and centers for social welfare. They took care of themselves. But some kind of way in the 1970s, we 60s, 70s, and that's a whole nother conversation. Integration, we lost that. And so what they had to go through on a daily basis was a survival. When they woke up in the morning, it was about a survival for their life, their manhood, their womanhood was tested daily. These young people don't have that. And because we don't understand knowledge, we don't understand history, we have no knowledge of what they did, who they were, their experiences. They were hellified people to me. And that's why I always say at the end of my programs, podcasts, whatever, God has equipped you with everything you need, but your ancestors have given you the blueprint to be successful. All you got to do is follow what they did. Maggie Lena Walker, the sister in North Carolina that started a bank. Take what she did. B.J. Caston in Georgia that started an insurance company. Do what he did. Go back and look at what they did. But the main thing that they did that made them successful is they loved themselves and they understood. They didn't put anything in front of themselves. They recognized that God had equipped them with what they needed to do. It wasn't no doubt in what they were successful in doing,
So I want to add, Rolanda, she's going to come back on. I think she just got kicked off, but I know she's going to jump back on. I wanted to add and respond to her really great question. Several things. One, I think that this is what I am not my ancestors is a direct product of the sanitization starting from Martin Luther King on. Years ago, I interviewed, there's Rolanda. Years ago, I interviewed, here she is. She's coming through. So years ago, I interviewed Elaine Brown, who was I think the only woman who was the chair of the Black Panther Party. And she said that MLK and his legacy had been so sanitized, that in 25 years, and maybe this was like 20 years ago, in 25 years, he would be a blonde hair, blue-eyed white woman, right? Yeah. So I think that this is totally a byproduct of when you don't have the media institutions, when you don't have the publishing houses to publish the books and keep the books in print, right? When you don't have the lecture circuits, where they're actually studied scholars, not these people that go on YouTube and look at stuff and regurgitate stuff, but are actually going to Egypt and all these different places. When you don't have that, then you have a result, and then you have an educational system where we are not even present. You will have, hey, what's up? What's good?
I don't know what happened. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. That's that technology. I was answering your question, right? So it's like when you have all of these things that have been eroded, right, and purposefully,
Yeah.
you have, in my opinion, young folk who think that we don't come from a tradition of warriorhood and resistance, right? It was because of our resistance. So when people think of the abolitionist movement, a white man looking like Abraham Lincoln pops up, but it really were the Black people, the Black abolitionists who pushed for the end of slavery. And if it wasn't for them, and as well, another thing is that which is it's a really good comment. There's a book by the name of called "Losing Our Tribal Scars" by Michael. If you're in like Anglophone South, it'd be Gomes, but if you are in the Latino part, it'd be Gomez. But he said that at one point, Black people said we actually have to rid ourselves of our tribal identities that we still retain in order to beat this beast. And so that's his argument. But so even we were the ones who were behind the abolitionist movement, only for white women to use our tactics and take it for the suffragist movement, which is the exact same thing that happened with civil rights and Black power, and even Black women who were, the center or the seed for feminism. White women took that and it became the feminist movement. So when we don't have these institutions, and even I went to 2 HBCUs, so let's not, people are saying, oh, Howard University is great and everything like that. And by far, I support institutions that educate, Black children, but a lot of these institutions for a long time, HBCUs, they didn't even want Black studies. Yeah. And even on African American studies, this is all very recent. You know what I'm saying? This information while there were protests going on at these institutions. So I wanted to answer that. But ironically, let me say this. This is also the generation that has been taught to accept everybody. Everybody's one. Everybody gets a trophy. It doesn't matter. It's the A for the effort, right? And so I would say even understanding resistance has been watered down in them, and having this feeling that you cannot have a dissenting voice, right? You've got to go along with mainstream. So I think it's really kind of interesting, how this comes up, because I would say they're kind of like the first generation that gets this huge push of you must be inclusive and love everybody. It doesn't matter where you're from. Right? So you totally get erased. All right, that was long-winded. I apologize. That was a good question, Dr. Spencer. I'm about to call you Row.
That's all right.
What's your take on it?
Well, like I said, I thought it was just a very interesting perspective, because it was kind of a backhanded. I don't even know what to call it. I just know that it didn't sit well, because, when you look at the fight, today's fight, it's a different fight, right? Although we are having fights for survival, right? That hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. So the way that we participate in it actually hasn't changed either. You know what I mean? The people who are doing what they're doing would have did it in the 50s, in the 60s during the civil rights movement. They would have done it during Reconstruction. They would have done it during slavery. Those who were going to run are, their descendants are going to run too. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If they have that spirit in them. Mm-hmm. The ones who are going to stay and play the game, they played the game on the plantation. That's how I kind of see that, coming down. But when you say something in terms of like, I'm not my ancestors, I'll lay hands or something like that. And it's like you say all of that to say what?
Yeah.
That you don't come from shit?
But But you know, when you words carry energy and frequency.
Mhm.
And so we have to be careful what we say, whether it's coming out of our mouth or we putting it on a t-shirt. I am not my ancestor. You're making a declaration that whatever power that they have, you don't have it. Whatever strength that they have, you don't have it. Whatever wisdom that they had, you don't have it. And so, you know, you're making a declaration, and we have to be very careful about what we say spiritually. You know, how we ebb and flow in the society, because every move we make is critical. Every word we say is critical. You know, every thought and emotion that we have is critical, and especially now. So we just have to teach our young people. Even, you know, I'll even go to this. You know, people going with t-shirts, I can't breathe. We you know, that's not good.
Hands up, don't shoot.
Yeah, my hands up, I don't shoot. I saw one picture with a dad and his 3 sons, and it went all the way, don't kill me. You know, we had to be, I would prefer for nobody to even have, I mean, just walk around with a blank t-shirt before they start putting words on it. You know, just, you know, like the old folks say, if you ain't got nothing good to say, just don't say nothing.
Say it but this goes to the loss of honoring and understanding the necessity of ancestors, right? And how much the disruption. I like when you said that, you know, when you went to Egypt, you were like, we've been running for a very long time, right? So this did not start in America, right? And also, so when I was in Nigeria, I went to Egypt too, but I did, you know, I wasn't there long enough to really kind of get like a really good grasp of it. When I was in Nigeria and I was there for a considerable amount of time, I was in Ile-Ife, and I asked one of the brothers that I was there, and there was the Akara festival, which is the bean cake festival. And I said, hey brother, where do Nigerians come from? He was like, oh, Egypt, you know, everybody knows that, we fled. So this, whatever has been going on, fleeing and leaving and fighting is, you know, generations. That's one thing I want to say. A second thing I want to say, I was in Tulum, Mexico several years ago with my husband, and we went to go see the Chichen Itza pyramids, right? So we were on a bus, it was a 3-hour ride. There was a professor there to give, you know, historical breakdown of the area and everything like that. And so my husband said, tell me about the Olmecs. We were the only Black people on, it was all white, we were the only Black people on there. My husband said, please tell me about the Olmecs. This man, who would look like what you would call an atypical Mexican, right? You know, like I'm trying to think of a Mexican actor or something like that we know in the, I'm trying to think of it. Shit, hell, they whiten out all the Mexicans too in Hollywood. But, you know, a Cesar Chavez type.
Yeah.
His eyes went bing. Thank you so much for asking that question. The original people of, you know, Americas are Africans, are what we would call Africans. This is where our civilization come from. This dude started throwing out photos out his pocket. It was like, so, you know, thank you so much for asking that question, right? And I'm like, wow, it's so interesting. And even me here being in Italy, right? I'm like, tell me about the Moors. They're like, well, you know, the Moors, you know, they really are not in Italy. I was like, yo, the Moors actually brought civilization to Italy. So I think there's this kind of like whitening out and just invisibilizing us in the midst of all the trauma we had to go through. So I wanted to add that as well. But back to the ancestors, you were talking about frequency. This is this currency that I'm talking about, right? And we're so caught up in this dollar bill currency that we're missing the currency or the frequencies of life that sustain us, which are ancestors.
And you know, I think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, sis. Go ahead.
I think this is a uniquely interesting dichotomy for African Americans as opposed to other Africans of the diaspora. Because if you go to South America, if you go to the Caribbean, you know, and different things like that, their understanding of their relationship with their ancestors are very different than ours. In fact, you know, we went to Venezuela in 2011, and they had they called it the St. John Festival. It was for St. John the Baptist. But what you saw were people of all hues celebrating in this African, they had drummers. I wish I could pull up some pictures right now, but they had the drummers with the rum, and they would just go for hours, and you could feel them. They were just dancing. The kids were dressed up, and it was a huge celebration. Thousands of people, the entire town. But you also had those who, you know, they had dressed up in what we would call blackface, but in that environment, it wasn't considered disrespectful. It was in reverence to, you know, our ancestors. And I was talking to one of the sisters there, and I said, you know, I don't think that we could have something like this in the United States, because these people were saying, I am African. You know, they were Venezuelan nationality, but even when we talked about how they had the new census under Chavez, and they had designations like or descendants of Africans, and things like that. And a majority of the country, no matter how they presented physically, said that they were a descendant of Africans. And I said, I bet those same Black people who have skin like this in the United States would still not honor that, you know, that ancestry. But they were proud of it. Not to say that racism doesn't exist there, it absolutely does. But I think it's on a different, this self kind of deprecation that we have as African Americans, I don't see in a lot of other places. You know, this, now you do have those who want to lighten their skin and, you know, and all of these kind of aesthetic changes, but their understanding of their heritage surpasses ours. And their reverence for their ancestors is not steeped in this demonization and this negative connotation that we have. And I wonder what it was, because they're very much Catholic in those countries as well, or the ones that I've been to. So I have a hard time understanding what happened to us as the descendants of American enslaved people as opposed to others.
Well, one of the things that happened with that, Rolanda, is you have to look at those countries that were under the Catholic Church or Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
Catholicism was open to let Black people experience some of their culture and their traditions, to still hold on to it. You know, if you went into Cuba, you know, they have strong Catholicism. You went into Brazil, strong Catholicism, and they were able to still hold on to some of those culture and traditions of their religions and mask them in Catholicism.
Right.
Which was normally done by the French and other places like that. What happened to us in America? We had a brutal dictator. We had a brutal taskmaster, because they were dealing with Protestantism. Protestantism believed in wiping out having no connection to your heritage, none whatsoever. That's why when slavery here in America, they had a law for everything. They didn't even want you to beat the drum. You know, anything that resembled Africa, they put in 100% effort to wipe it out. They even went so far to separate, in some cases, to make sure that the ratio of enslaved people from certain areas didn't go beyond certain numbers. You know, make sure if this group was from Angola, this group was from today what is Liberia or Ghana, make sure that we didn't get too many Igbo people together. So the Protestantism, that part of religion, which is what we came up under here in America, they totally tried to wipe it out, and they built churches for us. And they were there to watch us on our Sunday worship experience. That was different from those brothers and sisters that were under Catholicism. So here in America, they wanted to make sure there was no remembrance. Everything was wiped out.
I would like to respond. Oh, this is a good conversation, y'all. So as somebody who was raised Catholic and majority of my family is Catholic, my experience has been radically different in terms of Catholicism and its racism. Catholicism. Ooh, okay. So I'm trying to say it without, just getting focused. So let me tell you what the Catholic Church does. So when what do you call these missionaries from the Catholic Church go to places now and they colonize or conquer, they allow those indigenous groups to practice it. They say practice Catholicism. You can practice it using your language and even some of the customs that you have, but as long as you identify as Catholic. African Americans are the only group that has not been recognized for having, it's called a rite, R-I-T-E. They are the only group in the Catholic Church that the Catholic Church has denied repeatedly to allow us to worship within our own customs. And I was in on those meetings back in the 90s that talked about that. So the Catholic Church, specifically why it does that for the United States, I'm not 100% clear. I want to say that. Secondly, the Anglicization of the United States also intertwines into the Protestant spread, right? So my mother's side from Louisiana, all of them had like what we would call Latin American names. Actually, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, those were actually considered in the east side of Texas were considered the northernmost point of Latin America or the Caribbean, because a lot of people there spoke Spanish, they spoke French. There are a lot of things that were, culturally Caribbean and Latin American specifically. So when my grandmother was a little girl, she said that white English speakers forced a lot of people in that region to change their French names or their Spanish names to what the English version is. As well, a lot of the customs and the things that they did, they were not allowed to do. And it was all within the name of the Catholic Church too. So I wanted to say that. Secondly, Rolanda, I have never been to Venezuela, but I was in Argentina. Argentina's experience is radically different than Venezuela. Actually, in Argentina, they massacred thousands of Africans after they built up the country, to the point that today when I was in Argentina in 2019, and I said, oh, hey, where's the Black people? They were like, I asked the cab driver, because he was Indian. So I said, hey, yo, where's the Black people? He said, there are no Black people in Argentina. They're in Venezuela. That's like the next Black people. So what happened is that this history of literally massacring, and then the little Africans that you have left, this forced miscegenation where you have fairer and fairer and fairer and whiter generations, has also invisibilized very clearly, you know what I'm saying, Afro-Argentinians. So I also want to say that, and I think that's part of the American experience. It was a numbers game. We are numerically the minority. And Venezuela wasn't like that. And Brazil wasn't like that. Jamaica, Trinidad. So what happens is, I think that we have had to retain our culture in ways, or whatever we did, that today we exist in this. We don't even understand what we're doing is indigenous, right?
Yeah.
So, and I also want to say, go back to what Baba Todd was talking about. I'm doing this work on North Carolina, Wilmington specifically. In North Carolina, the annual celebration, they still actually have these celebrations, I think in Durham or Raleigh or in this, where they have what is called the stilt walker, the Goombay dance.
Yes.
Right. And so that was a very popular thing that came during the festivals until the massive slaughter that happened in the late 1800s in Wilmington, North Carolina. And a lot of people, you simply had to go underground. Another thing, most insurrections in the United States have been connected to people who practice spirituality. David Walker, right, he was a pastor, right? But he called for, you know, basically the annihilation of anybody who, you know, white folk who supported slavery. Denmark Vesey, his co-conspirators were traditionalist practitioners. Haiti, right? Even what do you call this? I think it's the 1813 in Louisiana, the insurrection.
That's right.
These were what today people would call witch doctors, which they weren't, right? These were people who used African spirituality in order to lead insurrection. Even what's this?
Nat Turner.
Nat Turner,
Right.
right? Our spirituality was very much connected to resistance, and it still is tied to resistance. Even with King, right? It's intricate. You can't be a warrior and not have spirit, and you cannot be a spirit person and not have warrior in your blood and deal with this, right? So I think that's also part of the reason why we don't see it in this way.
I think when you brought up those revolutionaries, I think about all of those ministers like Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, even as late as Henry McNeil Turner. What they saw, when I tell people, a lot of our people now are saying Christianity, we don't have to throw it away. When you understand true spirituality and you're rooted with nature, which is African spiritual systems, there's a connection to nature. When Nat Turner did his thing, it was an eclipse. He looked at nature and saw that it was something different. Harriet Tubman, when she began her experiences, she had a connection with nature. A lot of times when she was leading the people, she went on her intuition and her spirit on what direction to make. Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, all of these people. So I think and I always said, what was it that separated them from, that made them to want to, or had a desire to go and fight like that and to lead people and to put it all on the line? And I always go back to Haiti and their revolution. And I compare the two and I look at all, they said one thing, like in the prayer, I think the prayer was with Bookman, we say, we are going to give them their God back. And when you look at Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey and Gabriel Prosser, they recognized that what those people were worshiping, what those people were singing about, wasn't their experience. So they had gave them their God back, which is the only way I think that they truly went into revolution like that. You have to, and it's nothing wrong with saying, I'm gonna get that man his God back, because that ain't mine. Because see, anybody with good common sense to say, now you going over here, you praying to him, and he telling you to continue to abuse me, to oppress me, to rape me, to murder me. He ain't looking out for me. And so our people had enough sense, even in their songs, and that's another thing with our ancestors. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going. That song meant a lot of things. On the surface, it meant that this white man over here talking about heaven, trying to preach to me about heaven, he ain't going. And then also that was a song, a way of communication to say, look, it's time to run tonight. And this is where we're gonna go. Everything we did was connected to Africa or connected to our ancestors. The food we cooked, The way we made our quilts and the way we hanged them up was signposts to the way, my mother was a part of an organization of women that made quilts. And they can tell you every diagram, what it meant, where it was put on the quilt, what was the message. So that goes to speaking to the brilliance of our people. And when you say, I am not my ancestor, you're negating that intelligence, that creativity, that spiritual aspect which connects you to the true God. Because only way you can do those type of things is to be connected. I'm looking at your hair, Kaia, and if even, when I was a 70s baby, I grew up in the 70s. So having braided hair, plaited hair, that was a thing, And if you go to anywhere where there's a large indigenous African people, Jamaica, I was fortunate to go to Jamaica, Belize, all Nigeria. Everybody does that. And when you look at your hair, that's a type of math. We're dealing with fractals. That's a high level math. And every design, every line in your head, the sisters know how to do it. And you even have little girls plaiting folks' hair when I was in Jamaica. The white tourists wanted to have plaited. The little bitty girls in Jamaica were doing it. So to me, that's a creative genius. That's a form of our spirituality and custom that were passed down. So when you say you're not your ancestors, you missing it. You don't understand.
And, maybe I could propose this. Maybe that is intuitive on their part. Maybe you're not. You see what I'm saying? But not in a powerful way. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe you're communicating something about yourself other than what you think. Maybe you're not as innovative and creative and strong as your ancestors. Maybe so. When I'm thinking about it, on the flip side of it, like you say, words are powerful. Maybe you're not, and maybe you should be. And maybe that's the conversation. Why are you not?
You see what I'm saying? We and I'm sure if we said it long enough, we can think of many reasons why we are disconnected, why it has been severed. I look at the music industry. The type of songs that were, we go back, do a little history, go back to NWA. At Public, that split between Public Enemy and we getting in the NWA. That was a concerted effort to stop Public Enemy because of the message that they were putting in their music. Music is critical. It's a part of your culture and our spirituality. And when that has been tainted, then you really lose the essence of you lose your power. That's one of the main reasons why they outlawed the drum in South Carolina. It was responsible for one of the insurrections in South Carolina, I think the 1700s. So, every part of our daily life is spiritual. It's do we understand that? And the knowledge of that, how has it been severed? And when that is the knowledge of those things, our customs, our traditions, then also along with our ancestors. Because now we don't remember what Big Mama did, but what Big Mama did or Pawpaw did to help sustain us, So it's a lot in that.
And I want to connect several things. Thank you for the compliment of my hair. This is what I'm going to be rocking for a minute because my sisters are not here to braid it.
Braid, okay.
But I also want to say this. So this kind of connects back to this whole idea that in indigenous culture, this is across the board, right? But we're talking about us, right? Is that there is no, separation of the secular and the sacred, right? They are all intertwined. So as my hair has a mathematical combination to it, my hair and how it's designed also has a connection to the stars, right? So like so I forgot the name of the book, but when basically Europeans, the white folk, I don't want to say the white man because it's white women too, right? Were in part of this whole thing of the expansion of the West and them flattening mounds and hills and native nations and villages and things like that. There were surveyors that would survey the land, and the information or data that was collected, somebody reconstructed it in the 1960s and 70s. And it was like from Ohio, it went from Vermont to I think down to Mississippi. That's all the data they had. But when they constructed it, they saw that the mounds were actually literal representations of the solar system. So this goes back to the Dogon people. This goes even back to in South Carolina, how when anthropologists go to the rice fields, they were so geometrically accurate. They were like the pyramids, and that nobody to date has been able to recreate rice fields, right? This is connected to the stars, right? So that the astronomy, right? So this is not like, you know, I think also this whole thing of magic, right? This word is often floated around. What we call today's science ain't nothing but what I remember this Nigerian sister told me, ain't nothing but white man's magic, right? So today's science, it ain't nothing but white man's magic, because that quote unquote magic, or like in going back to Catholicism, these are the first botanists. These are the first, you know, scientists that explored and thought through and all that stuff. That's the same thing with us, right? So those who practice the sacred and the secular also were the ones who knew astronomy and all this other stuff. Secondly, I want to say this, because a lot of people might be listening or hear it and be like, well, how can I connect? Or how am I connected? If you've ever been to a concert or you went to church and there was a brother or sister who hit a note and sent chills up your body, that's a science to do that, because that person singing knows what they're doing. Have you ever went to a church and somebody sing, they'd be like, they did that, and a person walk away be like, yeah, I did that. Because, you know what I'm saying? Because they know how to move the crowd, right? That whole hip hop thing, move. That is a science that is connected to mathematics, order, astronomy, spirit world, right? But we have been so disconnected. But I just want people to know, like, it's as simple as that. Like when a person gets, so in, excuse me, I used to do African dance a lot. What is the Guinea? Is this Guinea or this is Senegal? So when the singer, the higher the singer goes, there's this whole story of a woman who sings and calls her people out of the forest. And the higher she goes, the more the people respond. That's tone, right? Which is connected to color, which is connected to mathematics, which is connected to the solar system, right? So just know, even if you can hit that note like a Shanice, you are actually tapping into something.
Yeah. You know, what the deal is that our people did not separate science from spirituality.
Exactly.
The European construct is science, or they say science and religion is two separate things. We understood them to be one.
Right.
Your spirituality is science. You know, your food. See, our spirituality was even in our foods. Mm-hmm. You know, some of the things we don't recognize, like every January 1st, if you go into most Black folks' house, you're gonna have some black eyed peas, some greens. And you ask, you know, that's just not you here in America. That's some places in West Africa also. Right. So your food, you know, your colors, I mean the clothes you wear, the colors, the coordinates. Some folks, you know, wonder why we like to get so dressed up to go to places. That just didn't happen when we got here. It's a part of who we are. You know, if we go back and we look at the Dogon people, you know, you look at the Ga people out of Ghana, you know, you look at the Igbo, the Yoruba, all of these people, I just go on and on. Their spirituality was connected to science. And the one thing that they had in common was veneration of the ancestors. I don't care what group of people in those parts of Africa, and also in America, they had a type of they knew to venerate their ancestors. And just on that, I know a lot of times when we talk about the history of America, and that's another thing we got to be mindful of, is British history of America is different from French history of America. Mm-hmm. British history starts at 1619. That's where we get to 1619 to 400 years. The French would start documenting stuff in the early 1500s, man, some cases before Columbus got here. Mm-hmm. And you will find that is the whole concept. We were here before. Some of us, we were already here. Now I got mixed. Some of us were already here. That was, but I still got a lot. I got to study about that. Right. But I do recognize there were a lot of so-called, what we say, African people already on this continent, and that's who Columbus encountered. So yeah, just going back, I said a lot, but we never separated science from spirituality.
And to piggyback off that, Baba Todd, I think what we find is with Europeans, that's the first time you really see a population or a culture of people who are trying to master nature in terms of dominating animals, other men, nature, you know what I mean? That was the first time where you saw this disconnect between man and nature with Europeans. There's no other population of people that I'm aware of outside of the Western world that had this disconnect between nature and man. And I think that's where you get the destruction of nature. We're having things like fire nados, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know, the world, nature is turning against us. And it's because we don't know how to honor nature. And it's almost like a ridiculous notion if you are looking at European types of, I don't know if I can even call them spiritual paths. I'll say religions in that sense, because a religion is the science of spirituality, or them attempting to make sense of whatever they wrote, whatever they're reading, whatever they're doing at the time. But to have to disconnect it in the way that says that because I am who I am, I can, overtake nature, it's something about that conqueror mind frame that is very dangerous, and it has proven to be very dangerous to everyone around you. If you have someone who wants to master animals rather than working with animals, even the thought of having pets, you know what I'm saying? You had animals to sustain your life. They were as beneficial to you as you were to them. However, now it's like we'll keep them in a cage, and we treat them like they're for our entertainment. And that's when I think that's where we have the most profound disconnect, is when we disconnect from nature. But that's what we were taught to do. You don't connect with nature, you master it. And I think that's where we lost.
Yeah, those Black people that grew up in the rural, to me, I have family still in small towns and the country living. And I tell them how fortunate they are, because they're able to, in a sense, to me, it enables them to recharge themselves, to go out, the air is fresher and clear. There's not a lot of hustle and bustle. They can hear themselves think, in a sense. So the best thing for us to do, and that's a whole nother economic conversation that I have, is about us going back to the rural area, going back to the small towns and recapturing some of that. We talk about establishing Black Wall Street. As quietly as it's kept, is you can do that if you go back to some of these rural towns, small towns, because some of them have been left, and it's a lot of Black people are still there. Some of them are even ran by Black people. So, you know, if you come up with a plan and just go back, you know, because I'm looking, there's a lot of Black people beginning to leave the North, come back home. They're coming back home to Mississippi and Alabama, South Carolina. They're leaving the West. They're leaving California. California about to burn up. So y'all need to come on back to Texas, Louisiana.
Don't be saying that to my peoples.
and just reestablish, you know, come back home. You know, and I know a lot of times.
We talked about that, Kaia. Yeah, we've been.
Yeah, we've been in conversation about that. Yeah, go ahead, Rolanda.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just saying. I was just agreeing.
You know what I think? If you look at, I mean, this is even in the Americas, but in Africa, in terms of what European explorers said, and their fascination is that we actually had two homes. We had a city home, and we had a home in the countryside. And depending on, you know, what the season, like during the harvest, you would go to the countryside, you would harvest, you would do the food, and then you would move back to the city. So a lot of our kind of movement as well, I wanted to just add that, went between these two, because we created the urban center. The urban center is not an industrial, you know, wasn't something that popped up during the industrial age. It actually was, those concepts, you know, are taken out of, you know, Africa, you know, Kemet, Egypt, West Africa, Zimbabwe, right? So I'm interested in that, as well as us considering that we have a city, but we also have a countryside too, as well. And I think that gives us more flexibility in how we move. And because I think this connects to it, and it is identifying. So a lot of people, I don't know about y'all, right? But as a professor, even when I get into the conversation about, you know, indigenous, African, and I do acknowledge Native Black people here in the Americas. The issue that I have is that a lot of people use that to disassociate themselves from being African. That's like the only issue that I have, you know, but let's play identify the ritual. So a lot of people don't know, like, well, what do I do? How can I start? I'm like, and Baba Todd, you say this, you actually are already doing it. So let's name some things that we grew up with or we heard about that are indeed rituals.
Okay.
Can I give you a little example?
Yeah, that's what we want. We want some examples. People need examples. They need to identify. And I think also another people think, like, how do I start ancestral celebrations too? Like, what does that look like is important.
We do things and don't realize it. You know, growing up, my mother was from Mississippi, my father was from Texas. And, you know, I was fortunate to have a connection with both sides of my family. And the one thing that I kind of just like drove me crazy as a child was, you know, you'd be whistling in the house and they said, don't whistle in the house, you know, and you know, I wanted to ask them why, but you know, in my family, you didn't ask them why, because you get your teeth knocked out. So, so I kept that as a child, and that not in the sense bothered me, but it was just in the back of my, why can't I do that? Why can't I whistle in the house? I said, go outside and whistle. Won't you start all the confusion up in here? That's what they would say. I was in Nigeria in 2007. And we were maybe the day before we were getting ready to come back home. Had been there maybe 2 weeks. Had went through, you know, ceremonies and everything. And one of the people, I think it was the brother I was with, I don't know where he was from, he started whistling. We were sitting like in their living room. And the sister comes running out the back. No, don't whistle. Don't whistle in the house. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's what they used to tell me as a child. I'm finna ask why right now. I'm finna find this out right now. And so I say, sister, why can't he whistle in the house? And she said, oh, SU come. And he bring confusion. And he bring, in a sense, bring chaos. So when you look at SU as one of the orishas of the Ifa, the Lukumi, the Yoruba people, Ifa, SU is the trickster. He is the great communicator. And so my people in Mississippi and Texas say, I don't want all that confusion in my house. She was saying in Nigeria, in a Kure state, thousands of miles away, you're going to bring confusion because Eshu will come in and he will bring all kinds of miscommunication and evil energy and spirit. We have been doing things and saying things for years and not knowing that we are doing the same rituals that connects us from this side over to that side. So that was a thing as a child that just stuck with me. Don't whistle in the house. And I finally got that explanation 40 years later.
I think one that I would hear, not so much in my house because I didn't do it too much, is like sweeping over someone's feet.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like sweeping over somebody's feet. Like I think I was at my grandmother's house one time, and I wasn't sweeping because I don't like to sweep. But I had a broom for some reason, and I swept over, and it almost touched her toes. She said, "Don't sweep over my damn feet." and I was like, excuse me. And I didn't really know where that came from. Later, I understood it to be something that would cause bad luck or something like that, but I never really got a sense of exactly where it came from. But I saw it on like a TV show later on in life, and it was like what do they call it, Nollywood or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was something about them sweeping over their feet, but they still didn't explain what it was. But I understood it to mean something negative, or some type of negativity was going to happen if you do that. Does anybody know?
Well, the symbolism of part of that, even if in most, I guess you can say hoodoo, which is not the same, it's not a religion, right? It's not like voodoo or anything. It's some of our mostly in the South. I used to hear if you sweep over somebody's feet, they're going to jail. That's what my people used to say. Don't sweep. Don't let that broom. You're gonna send me to jail. But really, the symbolism of the broom, it's just sweeping things away. Right. And it's the moving of energy. So if there's good energy on you, I guess they would say you just swept that away, and maybe open the door for something else to come in. That could be the case. I also grew up with horseshoes. I don't know about seeing people with horseshoes over their door, over their front door, over their back door. And when I when I was in Nigeria, I happened to go to a sister's house, older lady. We was on our trip coming back, and she had a bunch of iron stuff in her house, right outside the house, and it was for protection. And when you look at the horseshoes, mostly those people in the South, over their doors, it's symbolized for protection, to ward off evil spirits. So, if we were to take out some time and start being aware of what's really around us, there's always a connection to the continent of Africa. West Africa, but when you don't have the experience, and most of our people, they didn't really go into the conversation and telling you about that.
Right.
You know, and a lot of that was because of, you know, I want to say, because of, I don't want to say they were embarrassed, but it wasn't something that they went around talking about. A lot of stuff that our people hid or didn't talk about was based off of survival.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you were going to church, you couldn't be talking about hoodoo and rituals and, you know, and stuff to ward off evil spirits. You know, that wasn't something that, especially when our people have been over Christianized, and that's a whole nother conversation how I feel about that. You know, the true form of Christianity, if we understood it, it would free us. So, you know, that's my 3.5 cents.
I would also, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kaia.
No, go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh,
Rolanda.
no, I would also like to say in terms of ritual, what I've seen, even if you look in the church, they do a lot of African rituals in the Black church. And when I talk to sort of like devout Christians and some of the things they're doing and saying, it's like, well, you're casting spells. It's like you call it a prayer, but you're casting spells. You know what I mean? Or like when you this concept of the Holy Ghost, right? You know, that's a possession or
that's possession, straight up.
In the dance and in the language and everything in a tongue that they do not understand, is all of these are African things that they're doing. These are things that you know you're casting spells and performing rituals all day long on Sunday, you know.
Right.
But when they hear someone say it from an African perspective, they become afraid.
Right.
And I don't that disconnect. I really don't get, because it's like you're literally doing it right now. You know what I mean? You're doing the exact same thing. Go ahead, Kaia.
Right. No. I'm glad you started with that, or you brought that. And so like what you said, like the things that I saw, so the things that I see in Black churches, and I go to, you know, Africa, are the exact, and do the tradition, because let's keep it 100. The colonization of Africa has resulted in a lot of public, like even killings of people who do traditional work. But like talking in tongues, this is like, and being possessed. So people think that it's automatically you're possessed by a devil or a demonic spirit and everything like that. It's all still of God, right? So once you understand that, I think people will have maybe more comfort. But I want to offer some rituals. So I grew up in a family where we wear tillon. So tillon are the head wraps, but we called them tillon. And you know, my mom said you had to at least cover your head when you went to the church. And I said, well, what, you know, why you had to cover your head? And even when you do confirmation, a girl has got to have her head covered, like a veil over her head. And when you do ritual, like when I went to ritual in Nigeria, they cover your face, right? And they cover your head, right? Because it is, well, one, keeping your head covered and protected. Your head, your ori, right? In Yoruba, it's called ori, is one of the most important, it is the most important thing about you. So you must protect that at all times. That's why you don't have every and anybody all up in your head. You've heard that one. I don't have everybody all up in my head. That's why you even have Black men, when they have a barber and that barber has good vibes, they are dedicated to the barber. So it's not just women as well. And also like the veil, and this is like rites of passage, right? This is unlifting kind of this cover and coming into a knowing. This is very African. Also, we cannot forget the pour a little something out for the homies that ain't here, right? That is just like by far, you know what I'm saying? A ritual that we do, or even stopping and, you know, like maybe you're at a family function and somebody has died, whether recent or whatever. The fact that you didn't bring up people who have passed on, and you remember when such and such would do this, and people laugh about it. that's African ritual because you're keeping their energy in the current, in the frequency alive. There's a couple of other ones, like my mother would not allow, I don't know why, from a family of four sisters, right? And we could not, I don't know if you did this, Rolanda, but did you used to play in your mother's hair? Like comb her hair?
I played in my dad's hair.
You play in your dad's hair, okay. So we used to like play in my mother's hair. My mother would say, two sisters can't play in each other's hair because the youngest one would die. I don't know what that was about. I gotta ask my mom.
No, I've heard that before. They said braiding in particular. Don't have two people braiding your hair.
Wow. So these are things, and even like, splitting the pole, stepping on a crack, break your mama's back. A cousin of mine told me that my grandfather from Mississippi, my father's from Mississippi, would it's probably during like a season or maybe during the moonlight, would like take I don't know if it was sage, but it was some type of torch that would like smolder and run through the house. That is a total cleansing. And be in his drawers. I don't know what that was about, right? But that's a total, you know what I mean? That's like a house cleansing, right? So these are things I think we could pick up and talk about more too the next time because I got to do some more research because we're trained to forget these things.
Well, you talked about the splitting the pole, don't step on the crack. If you look at that not separating spirituality from science, our people believe in lines. They believe in fade from one phase to the other. From one side, the line separated the living from the dead. So and that even goes to your hair, the lines, the fractals. I mean, all of that it's a part of our spirituality. It's a part of who we are. It's no way around it. But when it's been demonized and you don't understand, your connection has been severed, then you're open for any and every little thing that's being taught or said about you.
Oh, I thought of another one. And this, my great grandmother apparently was a very, let's just call her one of the OGs of the WAP.
Look at Mama Todd.
She had that WAP. She was swinging that WAP-ola with her like 7 baby daddies or something like that. But when she passed, she was a very powerful woman. They had to cover the mirrors with white sheets. I got to find out exactly. I've heard about what that means, but they had to cover it with white sheets. And it was very interesting because when my mother talked about when my uncle passed, she said it was like the whole house shook and all of the shutters just went as if his whole spirit just like zoomed, out of the place. So there's something about passing and not having mirrors. Maybe it's like entering into another dimension or maybe traveling where you need to go or something like that. I got to look into that as well.
Well, I've had that same story told to me by my mother from her grandmother in Mississippi when her grandmother died. Her great aunt and her grandmother and everybody was in the house at the time. And so, you wasn't, there was no hospice. The house was the hospice.
Right.
And her grandmother came and told her, well, so-and-so she's getting ready to leave us. I need you to help me cover all the mirrors and open the windows. And so that has to do with that leaving one dimension going into the other. And I'm like you, I got to study more, but I know it does have something to do with that. And also, I have been privy to be at the bedside of people passing. And a lot of times you would hear those people calling the names of people that had gone on before them. It's like it would be like Mary, like she just seen him. Hey, Mary. And the stories that I have gotten and understand been told by the older folks is you always knew that person was getting ready to leave real soon. and that from the other side was reaching out to make connection with her. I guess in a sense to welcome her, to bring her in. So I've actually seen and experienced that on 2 or 3 occasions. So it's just so much to our people. It's so much to the true essence of spirituality. When you understand spirituality, you understand. Well, let me put it. When spirituality is nature, and it's intertwined with nature. And when you understand nature, you understand God. And when you understand God, you understand nature. So it's a beautiful thing when you're not spooked to death or scared or think you're going to hell because you just, you understand spirituality and you ask questions. You ask the spirit world, what does this mean? What does this say? What does this mean for me as an individual? What does it mean to me as a people? Until we get to that point, I will argue with anybody. We're going to continue to go through what we're going through.
Well, I think what was very masterful about how Christianity was brought into the fold is that you don't ask questions, right? A profound part of it is if you're asking questions, then you are questioning the text. And I've even heard people say, well, if you don't understand it, then it's not for you. It must be something wrong with you. You see what I'm saying? But I think that was a very skillful tactic to create a fear around asking questions. You see what I'm saying? To where you would even be hurt. I've heard people, my own friends, saying that they've been kicked out of Sunday school for asking questions. I've been talked about in a number of ways, like she must be the devil, because she's asking all of these questions. But one thing that I will take from the Honorable Judge Judy, if it don't make sense, then it ain't true. So,
Rolanda, in defense of some of our people, some of our elders, some of them didn't know.
Exactly, and I can understand that, and sometimes it would have been good for us as a people to be able to say, I don't know.
Yeah, but you're right. It would have been good, but even today, some people can't say I don't know.
Right.
And unfortunately, if you start asking questions and people don't have the answers for it, there's some fear among them also.
Yeah,
where are you trying to take me? Where are you trying to lead me with that question?
Right.
Well, then they are not elders. They are just senior citizens. Elderhood is something that is earned.
Well,
No, I'm serious. Elderhood is something that is, and I have senior citizens in my family. I have elders and I have senior citizens. And I think we really need to be clear about it, because just as much as our young folk, misdirected and guided and have made decisions that have been harmful to themselves and others, so are those in their 70s, 80s, and 60s. I remember in Watts, Jordan Down projects. I remember this story really quickly. I was teaching African dance, did not know why nobody Black came to the African dance class, but the Mexicans would line up around the corner to take African dance. And I asked, so why y'all taking African dance? They're like, it's culture. And I was like, I get it now. Because we have been, taught, and I know these things are learned, because we have been taught that we are a cultureless people and whatever it is we offer, that's culture, even though this whole world rides on our culture and makes money off of our culture. We don't believe it's of value. So I went and walked around, hey, African dance, and this senior citizen said, bitch, get away from me, you ugly bitch. I am not African, I am Indian. She is not my elder. She is a senior citizen. And I will never defend that. I just can't. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, damn. I'm glad I'm not your grandkid. What do you say to them? I mean, and there are people who are in so much trauma and pain that maybe they need to come back about 4, 5, 11, 20 times to unhinge it.
Well, one thing I like when we come back next week, I think I would like one thing that maybe we can explore is how to, even if it's possible, to undo some of this brainwashing, I guess you could say, or whitewashing even of our understanding of our spirit, not even our religion, but our spirit as Black folks. You know, African Americans in particular have an arduous journey that we have been on, that we are still on. And in Trump's America, you know, we're faring, you know, not so well, you know. So yeah, I would definitely like to expand that for next week. Like, you know, how can we undo some of these things?
Yeah, solution-driven conversation.
Yes.
Well, I do thank y'all. This has been, I needed this. I really needed this. And for those of you out there who respond, whatever the background it is that you come from, you are walking with us in this. So we will be talking about this next week.
Oh, one other thing, Kaia and Baba Todd, would it be okay if, like, maybe we got some questions during the week once you put this up? Maybe people can ask some questions.
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and even if we could, you know, pull from, you know, our networks as well to ask questions, that would be really good. So we could stay on point, because I can go.
You know, we all can.
All right. So thank you so very much for having this needed conversation. I look forward to our talk next week.
All right. See you.
All right, everybody.
Great.
Take care. Be safe.
You can't cuss nobody. Look at you. You're black, you're poor, you're ugly, you're a woman, you're nothing at all.
You do right by me.